It happened in the apartment that my ex-boyfriend rented, on the street of an expensive neighborhood, when I just rented the house. I shared it with a young Argentine who was studying at the same university on an exchange. The area was quiet and the rent was not, it was so cheap. But it was fine to live there. I would visit him several times a week, and it seemed strange to me that I never ran into Javier, the young Argentine. Sometimes he arrived after 12 in the morning, and when he stayed, he regularly left before we woke up. My boyfriend told me that of the few times I talked to him, he just told him that he didn't like being in the house, and he only went when necessary. As soon as the semester ended, Javier returned to Argentina. He did not say goodbye. He did not notify anyone. He did not have a roommate. I began to visit my boyfriend more, and that was when I began to notice strange things in the house. Sometimes we were in the kitchen, and we heard voices as if they were talking, in what was Javier's room, which was locked. It was as if two women were talking, almost murmuring. The first time we looked at each other when we heard them, but we preferred to think that they were voices coming from another of the departments. That possibility was almost impossible, and it had never happened to us, but it was easier to think that, than to think of ghosts or something similar. Things also began to happen to me in the apartment. Every time I went I heard laughter, giggles, as if someone he was making fun of me. This is going to sound very silly, I know. But, on one occasion I was watching television, waiting while my boyfriend took a shower, and I was going through the channels without seeing anything in particular. I don't remember if it was already very late, but there were many commercials. I left it for a moment in one where a man with a Brazilian accent talked about God, because they have always seemed funny to me, and I repeat, I know it sounds silly, but I could swear to you that a voice like an old man, that was heard in the same chair that I was in. He yelled at me, "Change him." The house had never happened to me. I never saw anything, but sometimes I thought I saw something running around the corners of the walls. Although when I turned my eyes towards the wall I never saw anything. It was like when you see a rat running along the wall of the house kitchen, but every time I passed by, you could hear those giggles I told you about. I didn't say anything to my boyfriend so he wouldn't make fun of me, and shortly after we broke up for other reasons, I ran into him a year later, and we agreed we had a coffee to talk. In the conversation we ended up talking about that apartment. I told him that I had heard laughter at his house, and he told me that he only lasted 2 more weeks living there. After we broke up it turned out that many things also happened to him that he never told me. The voices in Javier's room were an everyday thing, but he also heard a man's voice that seemed to be scolding the others. When he approached the door all the voices were silent. A week before the manager of the departments arrived, he opened Javier's room. A girl was going to go see the room to rent it. My ex-boyfriend told him that very strange things had been happening and that he no longer felt so comfortable in the room. Apartment, the manager, without asking him what he was referring to, only told him that he would lose the month's deposit if he did not stay for the time specified in the contract. Apparently the young woman who went to see him did not like the place, and when he returned at night everything seemed to be the same. He was making himself some dinner, and he heard a voice laughing in the empty room. He walked very slowly, trying not to make noise, and he reached the door. This time the voices did not stop. I could hear a conversation in there. It was not one, nor two. It seemed that there was a group of women in the room. Without thinking I took the doorknob to open it. The voices were silent. The door was locked and forgot after dinner, and ran to his room, closed the door of his room, and went through a piece of furniture at the door. After about 2 hours, locked up trying to distract himself on his laptop. He was falling asleep when he heard that the door of the empty room opened. Then he heard steps leave and walk to the kitchen, and then other steps did the same. He said that he heard as if they were moving the dishes, even the bags of food he had brought. He doesn't have many friends, but he was talking to a coworker, and with shame he asked him to please go for him, which he explained to him later. The partner arrived a while later, after listening to him so concerned, and even invited him to stay at his house that night. He did not stay there again. He was in a hotel until he could get another apartment. While he was finishing taking out his things, he thought he heard the voices making fun of him. Inside the empty room, one of the neighbors, the one who lived right in the apartment below, asked him if he hadn't put up with it anymore. Surprised, he asked what he meant, but it turns out that everyone in the place knew what was happening in that department. In fact, in all the surrounding departments there was some kind of activity, voices, things that were lost, shadows, nothing serious, but it was well known that in that specific department there was something quite mysterious. They asked him about a girl, but he never saw or heard anything like it. The lady told him about a young woman who left hysterical because she used to see a girl walking around the place, but one night she woke up in the early morning, and she felt her lying in bed with her. She told her all the stories she knew about the place. They were all different, but they didn't tell her anything about goblins, or what I've seen in the place. A few weeks ago I remembered everything. This is because at a party, a classmate of my best friend's school told us about an apartment in that neighborhood that she had to leave, because she felt here an old woman who always followed her behind her, as if crouching down. She said that sometimes he thought he saw it, but when he turned around it was gone. I didn't want to ask him, because I'm a sociologist, a person of modern thinking, who isn't supposed to believe in these things. But I don't know why something made me think he was talking about the same thing home.